Listen closely. Every single detail in this broadcast comes straight from elite, on-the-record insiders ranging from seasoned detectives and former federal agents to top-tier investigative journalists. We separate hard facts from educated theories, entirely ensuring any unverified tips or solo claims are called out explicitly. Right now, nobody has been officially accused in the active search for Nancy Guthrie, so please dial 1-800, reach out to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or ring the Puma County Sheriff at 5203 East 1490 if you know anything. Day 61 marks exactly 61 days since 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, mother of NBC Today co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, was spirited away under the cover of darkness from her Catalina Foothills residence in Tucson, Arizona. For over 2 months, her desperate relatives have pleaded on camera with a faceless captor, while the bounty for answers has skyrocketed beyond $1 million. Federal investigators, cutting-edge crime labs, relentless journalists, and citizen sleuths have fiercely chased down every conceivable lead. Yet 61 days later, handcuffs remain empty and 0 official suspects have been named, which brings me to exactly why this mystery completely consumes my thoughts. My obsession has absolutely nothing to do with her famous daughter or any flashy media ties. Rather, my focus lies squarely on the shocking dysfunction brewing within the very authorities tasked with bringing her home. Observing this institutional chaos unfold live gives us critical insight into exactly why 61 days have yielded 0 answers, especially considering federal authorities possess genetic evidence. Detectives possess surveillance clips, crucial gardening items, and ongoing discussions with local workers, while a veteran litigator who spent his entire career locking up killers just stepped forward. Stepping in front of the lens recently, his words completely shattered the internet over the past 24 hours, entirely stripping away any vague guessing games. Instead of offering weak possibilities or keeping options open, he boldly placed an incredibly precise, unwavering wager right on the table. He pointed his finger firmly at the exact location where he believes Nancy's abductor is currently hiding out. I am keeping his revelation hidden for now, because before I play the unedited clip, you absolutely must grasp the groundwork leading up to it, as his bombshell declaration requires crucial context. His theory intertwines deeply with genetic processing timelines, those specific garden planners, Ashley Banfield's Day 60 insights into hired help, and the undeniable meltdown tearing through the Puma County law enforcement hub. Once you assemble this chaotic puzzle that attorneys claim will strike you harder than any recent news alert. So stick around as we unpack the Federal Bureau's true arsenal. Prior to exploring recent developments, we must establish the complete evidentiary timeline, which might ring a bell for those following along since episode 1. While veterans of this channel might know these details, grasping the entire scope simultaneously is absolutely critical for comprehending the massive weight of our upcoming revelation. The final confirmed sighting of Nancy occurred at her Catalina Foothills residence in Tucson on January 31, 2026. Authorities took the missing persons report the very next day. February 1st, after her highly unusual failure to show up for Sunday service triggered immediate panic among her loyal friends. Skipping Mass was entirely out of character for her, serving as a glaring red flag that a terrible tragedy had undoubtedly occurred. Federal agents strongly suspect the kidnapping took place during the dark twilight window, bridging the late hours of January 31st and the dawn of February 1st. Crimson stains painted the entrance, while a pair of rear entryways, specifically the mesh slider and the solid kitchen boundary, were discover gaping wide. The yard's perimeter fencing shared the same fate, initially suggesting a hasty escape, a frantic abduction, or perhaps a violent breach of the premises. However, the absolute game-changer came when journalist Ashley Banfield leaked insider police intel on her drop-dead serious audio show around day 58 of the manhunt. Those entryways were not merely left unlatched or pushed ajar by a breeze. Somebody had purposefully wedged them apart. With the rear pathways intentionally blocked from closing, you have to wonder what the intruder actually utilized as a makeshift doorstop. The culprit grabbed Nancy's personal garden planters, a chilling detail, proving this phantom arrived at her doorstep with a highly calculated, sinister strategy. Navigating the rear exterior, they snatched her potted plants to forcefully prop the mesh panel, the solid entryway, and the exterior fence, ensuring all 3 escape routes stayed completely clear. According to Banfield's trusted police contact, the rear deck served as the primary breach zone, a fact she highlighted heavily during her recent broadcast. While summarizing her reaction, she admitted being utterly stunned that the attacker weaponized the victim's lovely patio ceramics to systematically construct a flawless entry and exit. Veteran tactical leader Bob Cryer, who dedicated his career to the Puma County Sheriff before stepping down, joined her broadcast explicitly to dissect this terrifying tactical choice. He validated that manipulating the physical environment so methodically practically screams that this was a thoroughly rehearsed ambush. Far from a spur-of-the-moment crime, The perpetrator meticulously mapped out their infiltration and escape routes to dominate every chaotic variable, leaving experts constantly guessing at the exact identity and motive behind it. If the attacker executed this maneuver, it clearly provided them with an instantaneous flight path to quickly bail out just in case the mission went entirely sideways. Banfield presented a heavily calculated theory explicitly marking it as an educated guess, suggesting those wedged entryways were meant to be the ultimate getaway corridor. However, the elderly victim's physical struggles likely ruined that stealthy departure, ultimately forcing the kidnapper to drag her straight out the front entrance instead. Through a top-tier contact inside the investigation, the host further verified that several surveillance lenses and illumination fixtures outside the house were utterly destroyed. This intruder was intimately familiar with the surveillance grid, effectively blinding the home before executing their dark plan, which brings us to the chilling federal tape. 11 days into the nightmare on February 12th, federal authorities dropped a terrifying surveillance clip showing a disguised individual lurking on Nancy's porch during the abduction window. Agents distributed a stark description of an average-sized male standing between 5'9" and 5'10", decked out in shadowy gear, dark hand coverings, and athletic shoes. Carrying a black 25-liter Ozark Trail rucksack, the man is blatantly armed with a visible sidearm rig, eventually utilizing the front yard bushes for cover. He actually leveraged the decorative plants bordering the entrance to strategically mask his identity from the lens, which highlights a truly horrifying level of situational awareness. Standing inches away from committing an unspeakable atrocity against an 84-year-old grandmother, this monster still possessed the cold calculation to hide behind her personal foliage. Forget everything you thought about a frantic suspect. We are looking at cold calculated precision from a mastermind. By February 13th, 12 days deep into the search, authorities announced they finally pulled genetic material from the house. The most crucial detail is that this biological profile completely rules out the victim and her inner circle. The county sheriff directly informed the press that their forensic team cleared everyone, including relatives, the yard worker, and the maid. We are left with a mysterious foreign DNA sample right where the kidnapping went down, which changes absolutely everything. Running this golden ticket through the proper criminal registry could blow this entire mystery wide open right now. Let us not forget about the handwear discovered during the search, which perfectly matches the federal security video. Detectives located this crucial piece of evidence dumped 10 miles away from the primary residence. Forensics are swabbing that item for biological traces as we speak, yet the procedural chain completely fell apart at this exact stage. Pay close attention here, since this specific bureaucratic nightmare perfectly explains why the massive manhunt ground to an absolute inexcusable halt. Investigative journalists broke the story that local cops inexplicably shipped the evidence off to a commercial facility down in Florida, completely bypassing the standard federal route. The massive flaw in that plan is quite simple, since federal agents absolutely refused to take genetic profiles from independent companies. Instead of a direct upload, they created a massive bottleneck where the commercial scientists have to run their own checks first. All those results must bounce back to the local Arizona network before anyone else can even look at them. Only after state-level verification can they finally hand the profile over to federal authorities for a national database sweep. For those unfamiliar, that system represents the ultimate nationwide criminal index that every single police department relies upon to catch repeat offenders. An inside informant bluntly told reporters that this whole convoluted strategy forced detectives into playing a desperate game of catch-up. This exact same whistleblower confirmed the feds would have cracked the sample in under 24 hours if local cops had just followed standard operating procedure. While that genetic code languishes outside the National Registry, a dangerous phantom continues to walk the streets, completely undetected. Pushing back against the media narratives, the Pima County authorities insist the Federal Bureau actually signed off on using the independent scientists. We still do not know who truly authorized that disastrous detour or why they did it, but the hard facts remain crystal clear. We have a genetic profile. They recovered the handwear. The processing timeline is an absolute joke, according to forensics veterans, and a literal ghost caught on tape remains at large. While this procedural circus drags on, the victim's relatives are barely keeping their heads above water in a living nightmare. Going on record, her sister admitted that legitimate kidnappers reached out with extortion threats, prompting the family to broadcast their willingness to negotiate. Relatives posted a $1 million bounty for any tips that bring her home safely, while federal agents tossed in another $100,000 to sweeten the pot. Combining all the available cash bounties pushes the total incentive past $1,100,000. Yet by April 2nd, absolutely nobody has delivered actionable intelligence leading to handcuffs. 61 days gone, over $1 million available, biological evidence delayed, and 0 arrests made. This brings us to a precinct in total meltdown, forcing us to shine a massive spotlight onto the internal chaos consuming the local sheriff's office. That viral press release from Murphy went completely nuclear online, but it actually exposes way more than just details about the kidnapper. He is indicting the entire criminal justice machine, and grasping his true message requires a deep dive into the absolute train wreck of leadership overseeing this 60-day manhunt. The top elected lawman for the county planted himself directly in front of the cameras the moment this tragedy began to unfold. Through every single microphone shoved in his face, the commander portrayed an unwavering figure who fiercely protects his squad's controversial tactics. He looked journalists dead in the eye and defended his crew flawlessly, dismissing any detractors as armchair detectives trying to write smear campaigns against his office. Over the past month, however, massive cracks began forming in his polished narrative, and the initial disaster happened right at the victim's house. Barely into the hunt, the top brass explicitly commanded his deputies to lift the police tape and unseal the upscale suburban property far too soon. Grasping the sheer gravity of that catastrophic blunder requires stepping back and listening to a highly decorated medical professional. We are not talking about some talking head on cable news, but the actual 17th chief medical officer of the entire country. Prior to his federal appointment, he logged 30 massive years patrolling with this exact same local police force, giving him unprecedented insight into their operations. The man wrote the book on securing forensic environments, and when reporters pressed him on the issue, he unleashed absolute fire without holding back. The doctor bluntly stated that a tainted area is completely ruined forever, as you can never rebuild a compromised forensic perimeter. He specifically highlighted insane helicopter video showing a fast food driver casually rolling straight across the victim's grass during an active forensic sweep. Laying out the courtroom nightmare, he explained how any half-decent lawyer would weaponize that sloppy contamination to throw out every single shred of evidence gathered. Experts are now openly labeling the squad as dangerously inept, since real detectives never manage high-stakes operations with such glaring amateurism. Letting a random food courier drive over crucial evidence is not some tiny clerical oopsie, but a catastrophic error, and the former surgeon was hardly the sole heavy hitter blasting the sheriff. Even a legendary trial attorney with years of courtroom battles under her belt jumped on a massive national broadcast to demand the commander be stripped of his duties. The famous legal analyst literally equated the department's behavior to sabotaging the investigation, arguing that unsealing the house prematurely obliterated their chances of finding clues. Refusing to sugarcoat the situation, she branded the blunders as absolute disasters and pointed out that federal agents never operate with such staggering incompetence. Strap in, because that chaotic forensic failure during the winter was merely the opening act of this organizational tragedy. The fallout that followed essentially torpedoed the entire department's reputation in a way seasoned veterans have never witnessed before. Back in December of 2025, way before the victim vanished into thin air, the embattled police chief was forced to testify under oath. That intense legal grilling stemmed directly from a lawsuit spearheaded by the local union boss, a guy who actually represents over 300 disgruntled patrolmen working under the chief. Perjury is a severe crime, yet when asked a legally binding question regarding his past suspensions, Nanos practically laughed it off. He completely denied everything, but journalists quickly unearthed Texas police files, proving he caught 8 distinct suspensions between 1976 and 1982, losing a total of 37 days of pay across that time frame. Those official files reveal an absolutely staggering variety of shocking misconduct, starting with outright brutality. One violent beating even earned him 15 unpaid days because he battered a suspect's skull so severely the guy ended up fighting for his life in intensive care. Other infractions included illicit betting, refusing orders, firing his weapon carelessly, intimidation, neglecting responsibilities, abusing emergency sirens, and constant lateness, resulting in 8 total punishments. Those 37 penalized days spanned 6 years, culminating not with a peaceful retirement or a graceful exit, but a forced resignation to dodge being fired. Texas officials officially cited chronic incompetence alongside defiance. Knowing his ultimate termination was imminent, he strategically opted to quit before they could sack him. Somehow, over 40 years flew by without any of these dark disciplinary secrets ever surfacing within his official public profile over in Arizona. Once reporters leaked the Texas files, the sheriff dubiously claimed he assumed that sworn inquiry exclusively concerned his local tenure here. A local supervisor firmly declared this excuse entirely unacceptable, specifically stating such deceit ruins the credibility of any civic worker, let alone a chief of police. He publicly suggested to reporters that the sheriff's 42 years of local service basically looked like one gigantic, elaborate scam. That is an elected official openly blasting the acting sheriff currently managing a massive abduction case right before her, for the case of March 24th hit. The local police union represents over 300 active officers, the very men and women who hit the streets under this leader's command daily. They staged an official mutiny. Tallying the results showed 241 officers declaring absolute distrust and quitting, while 65 others withheld their votes. Exactly 0 cops indicated any remaining faith in their boss. Not a single soul among the 241 participants decided to back him. The union president stood before the governing council and bluntly declared their chief had completely alienated his entire squad alongside the public, begging for immediate intervention, which the council eagerly provided. All members agreed to trigger State Code 11253, a mandate so ancient it predates official statehood, remaining so wildly obscure that modern courts lack contemporary precedents. This specific legislation empowers the council to force any regional official into delivering sworn, legally binding testimonies regarding their personal behavior and departmental operations. Should the executive ignore this demand after 10 days, the council possesses the absolute power to formally strip them of their position entirely. Councilman Hines loudly argued that this leader completely shattered the profound faith the local citizens had initially invested in his administration. That scheduled April 7th hearing will officially expose whether this obscure maneuver actually works. Simultaneously, a former political hopeful launched a totally separate removal campaign back on March 12th. Activists must gather over 122,000 verified local signatures before July 10th for this supposedly neutral push that has already attracted both conservative and liberal backers. Just when you thought the absolute bottom was reached, city cops busted a regional deputy for abduction on March 26th, adding unimaginable fuel to the fire. That accused officer is 22-year-old Travis Reynolds, who was supposedly shuttling a restrained female suspect, according to official legal filings. This disgraced cop lost his badge following a shocking abduction arrest while moving a captive toward the regional lockup. He supposedly praised her physical looks, passed her an e-cigarette, suggested renting a motel room for intercourse, and later forced her to watch extremely graphic clips on his cellular device. He effectively trapped her inside his cruiser for approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes prior to booking her a terrifying narrative heavily verified by the prison's internal security camera footage. During his official interrogation, the disgraced cop bizarrely claimed he could not recall whether he actually proposed intercourse or displayed adult content to the captive. The magistrate locked his bail at $200,000, mandated a strict restraining order regarding the victim, banned him from holding firearms, and effectively terminated his career entirely. His initial court appearance lands on April 6th, completely coinciding with a famous television anchor's highly publicized return to morning broadcasting. Whenever journalists pressed the precinct about whether this ousted cop ever touched the high-profile missing persons case, prior to getting axed, superiors firmly refused to answer. So these are the exact investigators handling the mystery: a top boss committing perjury about his violent past, managing a forensic site deemed hopelessly compromised by a former surgeon general. Factor in a unanimous mutiny from every voting officer, a governing council dusting off ancient territorial mandates, an active grassroots removal petition, plus a disgraced deputy jailed for abduction whose potential links remain tightly guarded. Therefore, when an experienced litigator dismisses this entire circus as a spectacular disaster, you need to realize that phrasing isn't just dramatic exaggeration. That represents an objective assessment from a veteran who spent decades observing justice systems properly function or entirely collapse under pressure. Sadly, this particular agency is currently in utter freefall. Now consider the worker theory marking the 60th day of hunting for the missing woman. On April 1st, an investigative podcaster dropped a fresh installment of her popular true crime series. The bombshell premise introduced during that broadcast perfectly overlaps with the exact same shocking hypothesis a retired legal expert is preparing to unveil publicly. The host revealed detectives are finally chasing down a novel trail, deeply scrutinizing every single hired professional and independent tradesman. This dragnet includes transient laborers who potentially roamed the victim's upscale suburban community during the crucial window right before she mysteriously vanished without a trace. An inside informant intimately connected to the ongoing manhunt explicitly characterized the grueling task of locating these transient builders as an absolute disaster. Just visualize the nightmare logistics involved with this probe, considering this specific upscale district consists almost entirely of luxurious wealthy estates. Properties like hers require constant upkeep, meaning an endless rotation of weekly gardeners, aquatic specialists, climate control technicians, decorators, shingle repairmen, and general fixers. The surrounding streets constantly swarm with municipal workers, arborists, and builders tackling adjacent mansions. Crucially, every primary boss often delegates tasks to secondary crews. Those secondary outfits frequently recruit temporary muscle-rotating guys daily while handing out untraceable paper currency. You will find zero tax paperwork or legitimate onboarding files, merely an anonymous ghost who clocked in, sweated for hours, and vanished completely. Picture a total nightmare hunting down every single individual who strolled past that gate or laid eyes on her rear patio. Figuring out who memorized those security setups and access routes is practically an impossible task. Insiders close to this probe describe the entire situation as an absolute disaster, and honestly, they mean it. This chaos naturally unfolds when detectives attempt to piece together several weeks of untracked hired help flowing through a quiet suburban street. Authorities are left holding a massive tangled web of partial aliases and duplicate identities without any solid place to actually begin. To break down this theory, Banfield consulted veteran investigator Clint Cole, the man behind cracking the Nancy Woodrum mystery who explained police tactics for these worker-heavy probes. His most chilling insight really lingered in my mind. Detectives might have already crossed paths with the actual culprit without even realizing his true identity. They simply cast a wide net by dialing every phone number, canvassing the entire block, and interviewing every available handyman. Whoever snatched Nancy Guthrie could easily be hiding among that exact group of laborers, coolly responding to police questions. The perpetrator likely provided standard job details and a fake identity, leaving officers totally powerless to detain someone who legally refused to chat. Since innocent bystanders can legally stay silent too, authorities are forced to pivot and dig up those crucial clues using alternative methods. Match that theory against the grim physical evidence left behind, like the broken surveillance equipment, disturbed planners, and deliberately unlatched rear fence. The intruder possessed perfect awareness of blind spots to dodge the digital lens indicating deep inside knowledge beyond what online maps or a casual stroll could provide. This person had definitely stepped foot on the grounds, perhaps doing physical labor, right on the premises or for a next-door neighbor. You simply cannot gain that intense spatial awareness through a fleeting glance from a moving vehicle. It requires lingering around the actual home. Should the villain turn out to be a local tradesman who vanished back into the shadows of undocumented gigs, the police are truly facing an uphill battle. It remains a massive off-the-books nightmare filled with unrecorded identities and burner phones that detectives are still desperately unraveling on day 61. This is precisely where the rogue handyman theory perfectly intersects with the recovered genetic material. Should Nancy's abductor harbor a lengthy rap sheet, especially with prior stints inside the Pima County Justice Network, things could break wide open. Assuming their genetic markers are cataloged, that piece of handwear currently traveling from a Florida facility through Arizona channels toward CODIS transcends mere physical proof. It becomes the ultimate key to cracking the mystery, though a retired state attorney recently stepped forward to predict exactly when that critical clue might drop. Prepare to have your entire perspective shifted by veteran Orange County prosecutor Matt Murphy, a serious litigator who absolutely refuses to play the role of a media pundit. Far from a flashy commentator dropping baseless opinions, he boasts decades of grinding through brutal trials and laying out cold hard facts for jury panels. He intimately knows why police inquiries succeed or crash, recognizing the immense power of an established suspect profile versus flying totally blind. Joining Joe Patuto on the Professor Joe Explains digital broadcast, he delivered a massive, unfiltered breakdown of the unfolding Guthrie nightmare. Within the past 24 hours, giants like Parade and AOL have amplified his viral quotes to tens of thousands of users, so I'm bringing you his unedited, unfiltered truth right now. Here is his exact, authenticated declaration that has already been fact-checked by numerous legitimate media syndicates. Murphy confidently declared that he would wager everything he owns on the culprit being a familiar face within the Pima County lockup, expressing zero shock at the prospect. He chalked this up to his cynical experience, fully expecting the perpetrator to be a habitual offender freed by some misguided progressive policy which demands our immediate attention. Staking your last dime is hardly the cautious phrasing of a timid expert or someone just tossing around vague possibilities. That bold claim belongs to a seasoned veteran who has dedicated his life to studying both psychopathic behaviors and systemic bureaucratic collapses. He knows how initial appearances deceive, choosing to risk his entire professional reputation on one highly specific, uncompromising wager. Let us dissect this statement carefully, as calling someone a familiar fixture in Pima County carries heavy police implications rather than just hinting at petty mischief. It points to a fully processed individual who possesses a deep pre-existing footprint within the Justice Department's vast records. This means they were heavily vetted through mugshots and prints, likely leaving behind genetic swabbing if their past felonies warranted it. The authorities are not hunting a total ghost because local cops have absolutely tangled with this specific miscreant in the past. They are a recognized entity, merely missing the link to this current tragedy, fitting the classic courthouse definition of a relentless repeat offender. These individuals constantly rotate through holding cells in freedom, constantly violating parole, or catching fresh charges to repeatedly bounce back into Pima County lockup. They rack up endless bookings until every single guard clerk and district attorney knows their face by heart. Murphy then twisted the knife further, cynically predicting that a deeply flawed reform initiative likely put this dangerous individual right back on the streets. This serves as a blistering indictment of the lenient bail strategies in Pima County, rather than some philosophical courtroom debate. He firmly believes a catastrophic judicial failure allowed a known threat to slip through the cracks and walk free. Empowered by a negligent system that completely underestimated their violent potential, this criminal was unleashed to commit this atrocity. Taking aim directly at the leadership, Murphy blasted the entire operational process as a pathetic circus leveling intensely specific criticisms. He pulled absolutely no punches, calling out Sheriff Chris Nanos and Pima County Attorney Laura Conover by their exact titles. Imagine the absolute highest-ranking bosses running the entire legal nightmare down in Pima County getting publicly destroyed. A veteran attorney from a neighboring district completely torched their reputations, openly declaring that these supposed leaders are basically directing an absolute circus of epic proportions. Calling out the current sheriff and head lawyer directly on national television is far from a careless slip of the tongue. It is entirely intentional because Murphy fully grasps the sheer weight of dropping those specific identities into his explosive statement. He is pinning the blame squarely on their shoulders, declaring they constructed the precise toxic culture surrounding this investigation, making them utterly liable for every catastrophic failure. He insists the entire operation is completely broken down, and right after blasting Nanos and Conover, while staking his reputation, Murphy delivered a heavy truth you must absorb slowly. The Guthrie relatives truly merit vastly superior justice. Exactly 5 words avoiding bureaucratic debates or structural complaints, delivering profound ethical wisdom from someone who witnessed countless households facing the absolute darkest hours of their entire existence. He understands perfectly well how it feels when justice actually delivers for victims, compared to the crushing devastation when it utterly betrays their trust. The relatives of Guthrie merit vastly superior treatment, and the hidden truth buried within that brief sentence is that they are being completely denied basic justice. Let us finally connect all these scattered dots right now, since this exact moment is exactly what our entire 60-minute broadcast has been leading up to. Ashley Banfield's investigation into hired workers suggests the culprit possessed legitimate clearance to access the victim's residential area. Monitoring those laborers has turned into a massive disaster, meaning detectives could have actually interviewed the guilty party while remaining completely clueless. Manipulating those planters strongly indicates the intruder was intimately familiar with the grounds. Definitely not an outsider, but an individual who previously walked that exact same terrain. Genetic evidence clearly proves that biological material from an outsider was gathered directly at the crime scene. Down in Florida, a recovered glove sits untested in a facility, skipping the comprehensive national database check due to a baffling logistical choice that insiders claim caused massive and completely avoidable holdups. Federal agents describe the target as an average-built man between 5'9" and 5'10" inches, showing up fully equipped, hiding his face, and disabling security lenses before breaking inside. Ex-lawyer Matt Murphy from Orange County stakes everything he owns on his theory the culprit is a highly familiar face within the Pima County lockup, a habitual offender constantly rotating through the cell blocks. This might be an individual freed by lenient social initiatives that completely ignored their dark history and dangerous potential, and if Murphy is correct, that genetic sample resting in Florida is practically guaranteed to trigger a massive system hit. Whoever snatched Nancy Guthrie is likely already logged in official records with their unique prints sitting quietly in a folder and their mugshot already saved somewhere deep within a digital server. Meanwhile, somebody caught between that independent Florida facility and the National Offender Registry utilized by federal agents is potentially hoarding the exact closure this household has desperately sought for 61 agonizing days. This is the exact reality Murphy highlights when risking his entire reputation, suggesting the attacker is recognizable, but also proving the very establishment shielding leaders like Nanos and Conover is deeply flawed. That same network let this predator walk free via an absurdly lenient rehabilitative scheme, creating the endless delay we currently face, forcing authorities to testify under penalty of perjury come April 7th. The real mystery is if they will actually confess, especially as we hit day 61 on April 2nd. 2026, right before Savannah Guthrie makes her big television comeback on April 6th. During a tearful broadcast exchange, she passionately admitted that she desperately wants to grin again, ensuring every genuine burst of happiness serves as her ultimate act of personal rebellion. The anchor openly questioned whether she even fits into that studio environment anymore, though she firmly promised to give it her absolute best shot. Coincidentally, on that exact same April 6th date, ex-officer Travis Reynolds from Pima County is scheduled to stand before a judge for initial proceedings regarding his abduction accusations. Following that, on April 7th, Sheriff Chris Nanos must confront the Regional Oversight Committee, summoned directly by the immense power of Arizona. Revised Statute 11-253, that governing panel holds absolute authority to force his sworn testimony, demanding strict accountability regarding his personal behavior and overall department operations. Should he stubbornly dodge their demands past the lawful deadline, officials hold the leverage to officially empty his office. Although he promised full cooperation, his actual sworn testimony remains a massive wildcard, especially while facing supervisors who branded his entire tenure a scam alongside a police union desperately voting to oust him. We remain utterly, completely in the dark on that front, while the massive petition drive charges ahead toward a July 10th cutoff with 122,000 names as biological evidence slowly crawls from a southern facility toward the federal registry. According to insiders, vetting those laborers remains a total catastrophe, and as this manhunt enters month number 3, we still lack any named targets, 0 handcuffs, and absolutely 0 official progress updates. Yet an outspoken ex-attorney boldly stepped in front of the lenses, staking his actual identity in validated interviews across highly respected news platforms. He boldly gambled everything he owns on a singular theory. Whoever vanished Nancy Guthrie is a notoriously familiar criminal, a repeat offender, currently chilling inside the local Pima County Detention Center. Meanwhile, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie remains completely vanished, prompting her resilient daughter to resume her broadcasting duties as an act of joyful defiance, while relatives dangle a staggering $1 million bounty for answers. The desperate kin even filmed direct emotional pleas targeting their matriarch's captor, making it undeniably clear they are fully prepared to negotiate immediately. Those devastated relatives definitely deserve immediate closure instead of lingering in 61 days of pure agony. But before ending this broadcast, I must address the massive storm of opinions surrounding this terrifying mystery, ranging from highly verified experts to reckless gossipers. Certain commentators acted horribly irresponsible with amateur networks, falsely naming completely guiltless individuals pushing the victim's fierce children toward launching massive defamation lawsuits. The embattled police chief aggressively dismissed journalists as mere armchair detectives. Yet despite all this chaotic noise, Nancy Guthrie remains tragically unaccounted for. Ultimately, this intense debate cannot focus on the loud commentators, because this entire narrative revolves around a missing woman who solely justifies creating Part 5. She is the exact driving force behind our upcoming 6th installment, and until we secure the absolute truth, our team will relentlessly construct this timeline with extreme caution and razor-sharp precision. If you possess the tiniest fragment of data, a forgotten flashback, a random identity, or any weird observation from that specific residential block, please speak up. If you realize a hidden link but kept silent, dial 1-800, call FBI or the local precinct at 520-35149, because securing over $1 million requires just one viewer with the right clue. This story reminds us of a truth we should never ignore. A society is measured by how fiercely it protects its most vulnerable. When an elderly woman can vanish in the silence of the night, it is not only one family's heartbreak, it is a wake-up call for all of us. We cannot afford to be numb, distracted, or indifferent. The deepest lesson here is responsibility. Families must check on one another. Neighbors must notice when something feels wrong. Communities must treat the safety of seniors as a shared duty, not a private burden. A missed routine, an open gate, a broken light. A strange figure nearby, small details can become life-saving warnings when people care enough to act. This is also a lesson about justice. Real justice demands more than sympathy. It requires urgency, honesty, coordination, and courage from every institution trusted to protect human life. When systems fail, pain grows heavier. When people stay silent, evil finds room to breathe. So let this not become just another tragic headline. Let it become a moral reminder: protect the elderly, value every human life, speak up when danger appears, and never stop seeking truth. Compassion must be louder than fear, and action must be stronger than silence.